In this video lesson, we are going to cover the first part of secants and tangents. So remember, tangent lines are lines that intersect the circle at one point, and then a chord or a secant line is a line that has its endpoints on the circle. So a secant line intersects the circle at 2 points. Tangent 1, secant 2, and that's a chord as well as at 2 points. So what we know here, this theorem tells us that the measure of an angle formed by a tangent and a chord or a secant is equal to 1/2 the measure of its intercepted arc if the vertex of the angle lies on the circle. Okay, so the angle has to lie on the circle in order for this to work. It can't lie inside of the circle. So basically what that's saying, like here's a tangent line that this point is lying on the circle right here, is that this angle measure right here is equal to whatever the arc is divided by 2. So for example here, if I want to determine the measure of arc DFA, so I want to determine the measure of this big arc right here. Okay, now I'm given angle EDA, which is 80 degrees. Now what we learned earlier is that the arc, that the measure of the arc equals x over 2. So you divide it by 2. So in the other way, if we want to know the arc, then that means that we're going to take 80 and we're going to multiply it by 2. So here we're going to take 80, multiply it by 2 to get this arc right here, to get arc DA. All right, and that's going to give us 160 degrees. Now, because we know that a circle measures 360 degrees, all we have to do to find arc DFA is take 360 and subtract it from 160, which would be 200 degrees. Okay, the other thing that we're going to talk about is intersecting chords. And what this says is that the measure of an angle formed by 2 chords intersecting in the interior of a circle is equal to 1/2 the sum of the measure of the arc intercepted by the angle and the arc intercepted by its vertical angle. So remember a vertical angle is the angle that's right across from one angle. So these two angles are vertical. So what that's saying is that both of those intercepted arcs, x and y, you're going to add those together, x plus y divided by 2 to get the sum. So here, okay, it tells us that the measure of angle AEF is 120 degrees. So this is 120 degrees. And it tells us that the measure of arc DB right here is 150 degrees. So I want to find the measure of arc AF, okay? So what we talked about earlier, right? Let's label this, we can label this as X and this is Y. So we know that X plus Y divided by 2 equals this angle measure right here. It equals 120 degrees. Well, we already know one of those. We know 150. So we can say 150 plus Y divided by 2 equals 120 degrees. So we get rid of this 2 first. It's being divided by 2, so we're going to multiply it by 2. And that gives us 150 plus y equals 240. And then I'm going to subtract 150 from both sides. And get y equals 90 degrees. So y we designated as AF. So that tells us the measure of arc AF is 90 degrees. All right, so this one we're going to talk about the tangent line rule. Remember what we said, the tangent line, right? If this is x, then this equals x over 2. So here it tells us, and let me erase this real quick so I have room. Okay, so what this tells us is the measure of arc BC, so this arc right here, Oh, it wants to know what is the measure. Okay, what is the measure of arc BC? If the measure of angle ABC, so this angle right here, is 84 degrees. Okay, so since this is what we know, right? If this is x, we want to find x, right? Then what we can say is that x over 2 equals 84 degrees. So now all we have to do is just multiply it both sides by 2. Because remember, if the arc is, if the angle is half of the arc, then the arc is double the angle. So we're just going to take 84 divided by 2, and that's going to give us 168 degrees. So x in this case would equal 168 degrees. Okay, now it says, what is the measure of angle ABC? So I'm wanting to find the measure of angle ABC if the arc measure is 104 degrees. Okay, so on this one, right, we're just going to, this is x, right? We're going to take x over 2. So we're going to have 104, and we're going to divide that by 2, which is going to give us 52. So the measure of angle ABC is going to be 52 degrees. This says, what is the measure of angle ABC? So we want to find this angle again. If the measure of arc BDC is 282 degrees. So now we're given this arc, okay, 282 degrees. So now this one actually requires just one extra step, because in order to find this angle, we need to know arc BC. Well, going back to what we know about a circle is 360 degrees. So we can take 360 and subtract that from 282. So we know the measure of arc BC is going to be 78 degrees. So then when we know, right, the measure of angle ABC is going to equal 78 divided by 2. So all we're going to do is divide that number by 2, and that's going to give us 39 degrees. So we know that the measure of angle ABC in that case is 39 degrees. Okay, the last one says, what is the measure of arc BC? So now we want to find that arc if the measure of angle CBE is 108 degrees. Okay, so now here we have this 108 degrees. So this one corresponds to this angle out here, okay, or to this arc right here. So since we're given this angle right here, we know that we have to take 108 and we have to multiply it by 2. Which was going to give us this arc right here. So we know that arc CDB is going to equal 216 degrees. So in order to get the other arc, right, we just talked about what we know about circles, right? We're going to take 360 and we're going to subtract that from 216, which is going to give us 144 degrees. So that would give us 144 degrees. All right, this one is talking about the secants, right? The intersecting chords or secants. All right, so remember what our rule is, that the angle is equal to the intercepted arc and the vertical angle intercepted arc divided by 2. Okay, so this says, what is the measure of angle DEC? So I want to know this angle right here. If the measure of arc DC is 150 degrees and the measure of arc AB is 90 degrees. Okay, so here we have all the information we need. If we want to know this angle, right, here's this arc and then the vertical angle's arc. So we have all the information we need here. So remember, it's just x plus y divided by 2. So now we can take 150 plus 90, and then we're going to divide that by 2. So 150 plus 90 is 240. And then 240 divided by 2 is 120. So we know that the measure of angle DEC is going to be 120 degrees. Okay, this says, what is the measure of angle AED? Okay, so I want to know this one. if the measure of arc AB is 115 degrees, and the measure of arc DC is 137 degrees. Okay, so now on this one, I don't have the information I need in order directly to solve this, because in order to solve for angle AED, I need this arc AD and arc BC. Okay, so with this information, I can solve for angle E right here. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to take 115 plus 137 and divide that by 2. So 115 plus 137 is going to equal 252. And I'm going to take 252 and divide that by 2, and that's going to give me 126 degrees. So I know that this angle is 126 degrees. Well, now that helps me because this is from last semester, right? Look at these two angles right here. Notice how they form a straight line? We call that a linear pair. So now I know that this angle plus that angle have to equal 180. So I can take actually 180 and I can subtract that from 126 and I can get 54 degrees. So I know that the measure of angle AED is going to be 54 degrees. Okay, this says, what is the measure of arc BC? All right, so this is my question mark now. If the measure of angle AED is 82 degrees, and the measure of arc AD is 55 degrees. Okay, so now remember I know x plus y divided by 2 equals the measure of angle AED. So we know it equals AED. All right, so now all I can do is say, let's label this x and this y. So now I can say 55 plus y divided by 2 equals 82 degrees. This is being divided by 2, so we're going to multiply that side by 2 and this side by 2. So we have 55 plus y is going to equal 164. Then we're going to subtract 55 from both sides. We're going to get y equals 109 degrees. So we know that this angle right here, arc BC, is going to equal 109 degrees. Okay, last one says, what is the measure of angle DEC? So here's my question mark. If the measure of arc BC is 150 degrees, the measure of angle DAB, arc DAB, so this big arc right here is 146 degrees. And the measure of arc AB, so that's the smaller arc. Let me change my pen color so we know what we're talking about here. And the measure of arc AB is 90 degrees. Okay, so in order to find out what this angle is right here, okay, DEC, I have to know what this little piece of the arc is. All right, so actually here I don't even need to know the 90 degrees, right? Because here I know that make sure here. Right. I know that the measure of angle DAB is 146 and the measure of arc BC is 150. So I can take those two and add them together. 146 plus 150. That's going to give me 296. So I know that this has to equal 360 minus 296. I know a whole circle is going to equal 360 degrees, and that's going to give me 64 degrees. So I know that this is 64 degrees. So now I have the information that I need to solve for this angle, because I have the 64. Oh, and here's where the 90 comes into play, because I do need to know arc AB in order to solve here. So I can take 64 plus 90 and divide that by 2. So I'm going to take 64 plus 90, which is 154, And then I'm going to take 154 and divide that by 2. And that is going to give me 77 degrees. So I know that that is 77 degrees. And that is the end of secants and tangents 1.